Okay, we're rolling. Thank you. Munir Islam.
Yeah,
Munir
Islam.
Islam. Okay, make sure I got that spelled.
Munir Islam.
Islam. Okay. And you are from Bangladesh. You came to this country 19 years ago.
19 years ago when I was 18 years old.
Okay. The stories that we'll talk about today are stories that you have heard through your father, who started in science but moved into the area of journalism and literature a number of years ago, and had a very keen interest in learning about stories. And so he did a lot of research, and over the years has written what will be 6 books on the subject.
Yeah, 6 volumes of. Well, let me give a little background. Since his college days, actually, he was very much interested in folk literature. So, whenever he had opportunity to do some project, he would always, try to go and find out folk literature of our culture and try to write some papers on it. So, towards the end of the last 5 years of his life, he devoted himself completely in collecting folk literature from our countryside. And Bangladesh has a very oral tradition, because most of the people in the countryside cannot read or write. So the oral tradition is very important to communicate. So there is an oral tradition of our history, there is an oral tradition of storytelling, and matter of fact, people, there are professional storytellers, so whenever there is a festival or something, people rent or hire a professional storyteller, and he or she will come and tell the story and entertain people. It's a profession of certain people.
Okay.
So my father thought, he believed that the history that we learn in our history book are always written from the perspective of the ruler, because they are the one who patronize, the government or whoever is in power, the kings in the olden times, now the government, whoever is in power, they are the one who patronize history. So history is always written from their perspective. So that's why you find who was the bigger king, how extent was their territory was more important than what their people thought or what their people used as their culture. So he thought the history that we read in the history book is tainted from the perspective of the people who ruled rather than the people who were ruled. So he thought our folk tales kind of take snapshot of our historical event, because literature reflects people's life and people's thinking and people's ways of living, even today. So he said that some of the stories are thousands and thousands years old, but they have transformed over time because the language have changed, or the society has changed, but the core meaning of the story almost remain untouched.
Okay.
So he believed that if he could collect all the stories, and if he took an approach of an anthropologist, just like an archaeologist goes and digs out a civilization and finds out about an old civilization from his dig, he removes the layers and layers so that the things he finds is untouched. He thought that these stories, if an archaeologist can find these stories as a dig and kind of removes the layer that time has put, he or she can find the essence of the cultures of people of Bangladesh. That's what he believed.
Okay.
So with that belief, he started collecting. So he used to go in the countryside, get hold of these storytellers. He'll bring them home. He'll pay them, or she. A lot of times it's not he and she.
Both men and women.
Yeah, men and women, and he'll pay them, and he will never record. He never used a tape recorder to record the thing. He wanted to hear from the storyteller's mouth, and then he will write it down, and he will read it back to them. Oftentimes the storytellers cannot read or write, so he will read it back to them, and they will say, "No, I didn't say this, I didn't say that." So he used correct it and read it back until the storyteller and him both agree on what he's saying. And another thing he didn't want to do was tell the story in his language, because he thought in that way he will destroy the story. So he preserved the language of the storyteller.
Okay.
So if the storytellers talked with an accent, that accent is preserved in the story. If the storyteller used certain allegory, he preserved that. So in his stories, the spoken language was preserved, along with the story itself, the event in the story.
Okay. Was he able to talk to encapsulate hand gestures or any of the other physical pieces of the story as it was told?
Yeah. No, he did not. However, he mentioned in his foreword that oftentimes storytelling is an art, and he said that not everybody can be a storyteller. Like he mentioned, actually, not everybody can be a Hans Andersen. Okay, you have to be born in Hans Andersen.
Okay.
And he said that, like you can hear a story from somebody, and then you hear from a person who has learned the trade, you will really understand. So in that sense, he told the storytellers are artists themselves.
So there were some that were much better than others.
Right. Well, professionals ones are definitely good because they have learned the trade from their father and grandfathers and so on. They said passed down from families to families.
Okay.
Yeah, from generation to generation, I should say.
Family to family.
Not from family, from generation to
generation.
So usually, storyteller's father was a storyteller, his grandfather was a storyteller.
Okay.
That's how the craft got passed down. So he said that yes, the storyteller they acted out oftentimes, and they used hand gesture and all that, and but that story by itself is the literature of the people a lot of them who cannot read or write.
Okay.
And he said that there's a lot of poetry in there, because there's poetry with the way the story is told also. And other thing he found out in the research that a lot of the stories are used as an allegory. So in our culture in Bangladesh, there is court system, but in the village there is a system called salish, which is like a
Shalish,
S-A-L-I-S-H, which is like a village elders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if two persons have a dispute, they take the dispute first to the salish, which is the village elders, and see if they can rectify it before it goes to the court. And oftentimes, probably majority of the disputes get resolved at that level.
Okay.
Because people trust the, village elders and all that.
So both sides would present their
stories, and the village elder will give a judgment.
Okay.
And most of the time they accept it. And if they don't, then they go to the court. And he found out that most of the effective shalish or elders are the good storytellers also, because a lot of times two parties cannot see the truth in the dispute. So he would tell a story which will lead them to the truth. So stories are used as a kind of like a tool to show. And a lot of times, if somebody did something false, if you tell them, you screwed up or you did something wrong, then it's that hard for that person to take it. So if you tell a story and show one of the characters in the story screwed up, then if the person is smart, he or she will know that what that person has done wrong. So a lot of times
they will use stories to help judge a situation.
Yeah, right. And I can probably give you some examples from here also.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And other times, like stories, like I have actually, when I used to go visit in the countryside, I had like people come to my grandparents' house, and some of them would be storytellers, and we will just gather around him, and they will tell stories. And my father has also collected from my family members also.
Okay.
I mean, because they have heard from somebody, so he collected thousands and thousands of stories.
Now, are there equal number of men and women that tell stories? Are there more men? Are there more women? Does it?
I guess, yeah, probably almost equal number. Matter of fact, it is found that in family setting, the women are the ones that remember more stories.
Okay.
And they tell their grandchildren, and it gets passed on.
Okay.
Because I heard a lot of stories from my grandmother, more than my grandfather.
But in a professional But that's in a family setting, in a professional setting, where there's a professional storyteller.
Yeah.
Are they?
There are female too, but mainly male, I would say.
Okay. So there's a difference between the professional and the family storytelling process.
And professionals are usually mainly men. Yeah.
Okay.
However, there are cases where females are also. It's mainly because certain conservative cultures, that Bangladesh, the women don't come out in front of other strange men.
They're more behind the scenes or back in the back area.
Yeah.
They feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Where men, it's more of a man's role to try
to come out. However, I mean, a lot of time when a Salish will tell a story, I mean, they will say, well, I heard it from my grandma or they'll give credit to the person where they heard it from.
Okay.
When
you tell stories, is there a setting? Do people sit in certain places, or is it just pretty much the storyteller will sit or stand in one area and present to a crowd or a group of people?
Yeah, it is like that. I usually, when I went to, remember, a couple of professional storytelling sessions, but those are a little bit different because they are like, what should I say? These are stories in the form of poems, so they will kind of sing it out or recite it out, that kind of thing. So there, people will kind of gather, sit in a circle, and the storyteller will be in the middle, and he will kind of act it out and sing it out, and then everybody kind of sit around.
Okay.
And oftentimes the storyteller, what he does, he establishes a communication link with the people who are listening. So a lot of time, if people are not responding, he will say something to make the people respond.
Okay.
For example, I've said, "Bachcha log taliya bajaata." Hey kids, start clapping. He will say something, and all of a sudden he will say, "Come on, kids, start clapping." So all the kids will start clapping. It does two things. One is it establishes the communication between the storyteller and the audience. Also, if other people are walking by, they hear a noise and they gather up, so he gets a more crowd and he may get more money. Because people usually throw money, there is no prepaid thing. He probably has some kind of a container in front, and people just like throw coins, whatever they want. So that's how they collect money. So more people come to listen to his story, more money he gets. So a lot of time he'll tell the kids to start clapping, and that'll gather people. And then other times he will have some helpers who will kind of say, "Oh yes, you're right," kind of like add to his story, and then it establishes a communication again.
Okay. So people in the audience wouldn't know that are almost plants.
Plants. Okay. Yeah. So there's that kind of thing.
So it's a storytelling. Storytelling then is a very important part of your culture. Between families or professionals.
Yeah. Just like here, you hear from your grandparents. I would say, it's nothing anything any bigger than it is here. When you were a kid, you probably heard stories from your relatives or your uncle and aunts, same way.
Yeah.
Except in the countryside, like I said, there are professional storytellers because in this culture, 90% of the people can read and write. In Bangladesh, about 70% that cannot read and write. Cannot read and write. So oral tradition is very important to them.
Well, why don't we, as soon as the noise dies down, let's talk about a story.
Okay. Okay. Here's a story. I'm not a very good storyteller, so I was trying to, and there are a lot of things which would be very difficult to translate. So what I'll do is try to give you a kind of like a summary of what the story is. This story is called Milk Testing. One day, a king gets, milk from a milkman who supplies him milk every day. So one day he started kind of, just not, he started doubting that the milkman is not giving him pure milk. He's adding something to it. So he called one of his ministers and said, look, I'm getting I get this milk from this milkman, but I doubt that he gives me pure milk. So why don't you hire a person who can test the milk and tell me that it is pure milk and nothing is added to this milk. So next day the minister hired a milk tester. So so the milkman comes and gives the milk tester tests and tells the king that everything is fine. So it went by about a month or so later. One day, when the milkman came to deliver his milk, he comes to this guy, the milk tester. The milk tester says, "Do you know that your job depends on what kind of, what I tell the king? If I say you give bad milk, then you will lose your job." He said, "Yeah, I know, but I don't give bad milk. But I can still say that you give bad milk, because the king is going to trust me, not you." He said, "Please don't do that, because if you do that, I'm going to lose my business." He said, "Well, if you give me 1 taka every time you come, then I won't tell the king." 1 taka is, let's say, $1, okay? It's a monetary unit. So the guy said, "Look, I make profit 1 taka. If I give you that, then I don't make any profit. Why should I be here?" He said, "Don't worry. Just replace 1 taka worth of milk with water, and then I'll still certify it's a good milk and give me that taka." The milkman said, "That's fine. I still have my job." So he started adding some water and giving, 1 taka worth of water in the milk, and then giving the milk to the tester. The tester will say it's okay. A few weeks later, the king started doubting. No, the milk still doesn't taste good. So he went and called his minister and said, "I don't think this milk tester is doing his job right. Why don't you fire him, get somebody else?" So the minister got him another milk tester, fired this one, got a second milk tester. Several weeks went by. One day the newly hired milk tester tells the milkman, said, "Look, you know that your job depends on me." The milkman says, "Yes, I know." But, the milkman says, "Yeah, I had this deal with the previous one." "Yeah, but I'm a bigger milk tester than him. You have to give me $2 taka. Otherwise, I won't certify that your milk is good." He said, "Look, I only make, 1 taka profit. If I give you 2 taka, then I lose money." He said, "Don't worry, just add 2 taka worth of water, and then I'll certify it's a good milk." So, the milkman started doing that. A few weeks went by. The king now says, "Gosh, something is wrong." So he called up his minister. He said, "Look, I don't think this milk tester is doing his job. I think something is wrong here. Why don't you bring the milkman and beat him up, and maybe he'll tell the truth." So the minister goes and, arrests the milkman, and they beat him up real bad. And the milkman tells him what has been going on. Then, of course, the king puts the 2 milk testers into prison, and then saying that, "I made a mistake in distrusting you, so you still have the job, continue." So that is the story. But the moral of the story is, again, that a lot of time you create, jobs, but that job not create. Can you stop with me? Sure. This story was actually told by one of those village elders when he was giving a judgment on a dispute between 2 brothers. Well, what happened is there was 2 brothers. There was 2 brothers, and their father has died and left them their home, father's home. So they'll see in Bangladesh this is a kind of a joint family. So all the sons and father, they all live together, and kind of like when the father passes away, the sons kind of own and they share in the household. So two brothers were living in their father's house because father passed away. The younger brother was kind of saving some money on the side, and he bought another house in another village. So the older brother kind of started feeling jealous about it because he couldn't save and do that. So, but the youngest brother found out he was not living in peace in the other newly bought house. That several people came and theft. There were several theft took place in his house. Some people were breaking down stuff in his house. So he went to the old village elder to ask for find out who's doing that in that village. The village elder, after finding out the facts, found out is the older brother doing that because he started feeling jealous.
So the older brother would hire thieves as well as people to ransack the home?
Yeah, ransack the house. So the moral of this, you're saying that you can sometimes like the king have hired this milk tester, but they're really causing the harm rather than the person. So here, that the villagers say that if the people of your own house are causing you harm, the others cannot do that. So all these people that caused, all the theft was done by his older brother, all this damage was done by his older brother, but he didn't do it himself, but he hired people to do it. I should just kind of tell you that you see your brother that is doing that, but don't blame others.
Okay. Don't blame the people that were really doing the harm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a saying, like in the village, a lot of times the floor of a house is raised, a little bit, but the floor is dirt floor. Okay, so they say, like a lot of times when the thief comes, they kind of dig through holes, and that's how they enter into the house. Okay, so they're saying that if the house mice digs a hole, don't blame the thief. do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Are there in the story of the milk tester? Do the characters have any significance to the Bangladesh society? Will a milk tester mean something other than just simply a milk tester? Are there any deeper meanings to any of the characters or the story itself?
Yeah, he mentioned that a lot of time. He mentioned that that he also found that there's a lot of inefficiency and corruption in the bureaucracy. He said that a lot of time that in the government, the bureaucracy itself is responsible for inefficiency and stealing of government property.
Okay.
So he said that how nicely this story reflects that fact. And they found out, like, if you go to get some government job done, you pay the peon less amount, but if you go to the bigger guy, you pay him more amount of bribery. So like the first tester was getting 1 taka, the next one was a bigger tester, but he got 2 taka.
Okay.
So he said that as you go up in the ladder, you pay more bribery. So he was just making some reference to that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one. That's the story.
Oh, okay. So the story does have significance in a couple of different areas, other than being used to help settle a dispute.
Yeah.
It also can relate part of the culture.
Yeah.
In this case, talking a little bit about bribery and government officials.
Yeah. And a lot of the stories are also very. Oh, another thing is storytellers use factual anecdotes also to tell. I mean, there's a lot of the stories have real factual anecdotes.
Okay.
Them. And a lot of time is to capture the attention. Other times they also tell certain truth.
Okay.
And so there are certain there's one that that's a good one. It was not really sexual, but it shows what a tout is. Tout?
Tout?
Yeah. I don't know if it's probably maybe a British word. Some people who who bluff others.
Okay.
What is it? What, do you have a name for that?
People bluffers like bluffs another one?
Yeah.
I'm not real good at
Or bluffers, or some people who kind of cheat, you know. There's one story, I don't know where it is, there's, let me think if I know the story right. Yeah, I'll try to paraphrase it. The story is really nice, but I don't know whether the cultural meaning will be there or not, but I'll tell it anyway. In like, is it on?
Yes.
Okay. In Bangladesh society, there are like some priests. They are not really priests, but they kind of, what do you call it? Fake as a priest. But you know, it's very easy to exploit a person through their religious feeling, because people are very religious. So if you come, so the people usually tend to respect a priest or you know, and invite them to their house, kind of treat them nicely. So a lot of time, even though they're not priests, they will act one just to exploit the people.
Okay.
So one such, this is a story about one such, you know, bluffer or whatever you call exploiter. And this guy, you know, he dressed up as a priest, and he saw this poor farmer. He said, "Look, you know, I'm a priest. You know, I'm hungry. Why don't you, you know, take me to your house, feed me something?" And the guy said, "Wow, this is, you know," he thinks by feeding a priest it will be good deed. So he brought the priest home, but he was very poor and he was not prepared for this. So he said, "Well, why don't you sit here, sir? Let me go to the shop and get some food, so my wife will prepare the food, then you can eat." And fine, you know, the priest also brought along his little son along with him. So before he goes, you know, he tells his wife, "Why don't you start preparing? I'll go get some food then, so that we can feed this priest." But you know, the wife says, "Fine, I'll start preparing." So he started preparing. A few minutes after the farmer was gone, the so-called priest sent his son. He said, "Well, why don't you go and ask, you know, bring me a glass of water." So the son goes inside. And when the son went inside, you know, in the kitchen, the wife was preparing to give a glass of water. This priest was kind of peeking through the, you know, window and trying to look at the good-looking women, because he's not really a priest. He's just trying to see, you know, how good the women is and all that. So he's peeking through. And when he was doing that, the women saw that. So then the women, you know, but she acted as if she didn't see it. But she knew then that this cannot be a priest, because a true priest will not do that. He knew he was a crook. So she gave the boy a glass of water and then sent him back. A few minutes later, he said, "Well, why don't you go ask him to give me some snacks?" So the boy goes to the farmer's place. So, well, he wants a little snack because he's waiting for the food. He said, "Fine." So she started thinking, so, "Well, how can I do that?" So she said, "Okay, fine. Let me prepare the snack." So it's going to take me some time. So just to show the fraud and his son that he's preparing, she took some utensils, started making noise as if she's preparing snacks. So he thought he's preparing snacks sitting there. And then the little boy kind of hanging around. He said, what are you doing?" She took one of these, what do you call it, puta, which is like a grinder. It's like a
mortise and pestle?
Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like a spice grinder. So she was kind of grinding them up, with whatever the guy said. "Why are you doing that?" So then she started crying, "Why are you crying?" The little boy got a little scared. He said, "Well, I'm crying for you and your father." He said, What happened?" "Well, my husband, when he went to the market, he actually told me to grind up this thing so that when he comes home, he can, he went to get some oil, so he wanted me to grind it up so that when he comes home, he can shove it through your father's ass." The kid got really scared. He came up, father, let's get the hell out of here. This lady is guiding us this thing. And when this other guy will come, he's going to shove it through our hands. So the father, the guy got a little scared, so he said, let's go. They're walking away. And as they were walking away, the farmer was coming back home. The farmer said, where are you going, sir? Where are you going? No, we're not going away. We'll be back. Just go on home. So the farmer came home. The farmer said, what did you say? We got right up there leaving. He said, oh no, I didn't say nothing. They wanted to take this grinder, from you. And I said, no, you cannot have it because that's the only grinder we have. So that's why he got upset and he left. Then the farmer said, oh, come on. The holy man wanted this thing and he didn't give it to me. Give it to me. It's very simple. I'll get you another one. But he ran out with the grinder. He said, holy man, you want the grinder. The holy man said, sorry, no. The holy man not thought. So he said, coming to shove it through his hand. So the moral of the story here is like, a lot of times usually, well, not the moral, his explanation was, whatever I remember is, a lot of times the farmers or the man of the house, they work hard, they're very simple-minded. That is a lot of times their spouses, because they run into this kind of house, they deal with them more, so they're more apt to dealing with them. So he didn't want to hurt his religious feeling, because he probably would have believed her if he would have said that. He probably blamed her because he acted so nicely as a holy man. So she conjured up this story so that she can get rid of the power at the same time, not break his husband's feeling,
Okay.
or her husband's feeling.
So many times the woman will be considered more worldly than the husband.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now is that true in Bangladesh society?
It is true. Women actually, even though men kind of are upfront in the society, like they go out and work, they do this, but actually the family is actually run by the women.
Okay.
They are the one who plan things, who kind of whatever. But the farmers, like in Bangladesh, 90% of the people are farmers. They're very simple, not simple not in the sense, they're very religious, simple kind of people, okay? And a lot of times people take advantage of it, but the women are much more, what do you say, they are more apt to deal with that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's how it's looked at.
All right. So they're stronger in some ways and stronger in dealing with other people and other situations.
Yeah.
Like kind of the glue of the family.
Yeah. And I would say they're probably the manager. They probably manage the family.
Okay.
I've seen my father worked outside. My mother was. It has changed now in the city because now both father and mother both work. But I'm talking about in a traditional village kind of family. Father would be probably going out and earning the money, working the ground. Mother would be actually running the family.
Okay.
Okay. She decides who gets what, who sleeps where, who deals with whom.
Okay.
But the father kind of brings the money home, or there's a balance there. So in a real sense, I think women probably have more power in that.
We were talking about the religiousness of the family.
Yeah.
The story with the priest. Is there meaning there in terms of the priest, in terms of how a priest might, I won't say might act, but is there a deeper meaning in terms of a priest?
There is a one, I think. For example, in Bangladesh, majority of the people are Muslims, 85%, and Islam is the religion. Islam doesn't really believe in priesthood, okay? But priesthood has, some people thrive on, priesthood is a big profession in Bangladesh, if you can think, because here only thing you have to do is you have to know a few prayers that you can recite in public so that you know something about religion.
Okay.
And keep a long beard so that, like most of the religious people keep a beard, wear a kind of like a traditional religious clothing, costume, and then you can pretend to be a religious man. So these so-called professional religious people really gave a bad name to the religion because Islam doesn't require, there is no you don't have to have anybody. You need a leader in the prayer who conducts the prayer, but it could be anybody.
Okay.
You don't have to be trained in certain order to lead a prayer. So it could be some Joe Blow. Anybody is equal. Anybody can lead the prayer.
Okay.
So, but certain people use people's feelings for the religion and made it into a profession.
Okay. So this is a good way to poke fun.
Yeah.
Really, to poke fun at priesthood
and there's a lot of jokes and stories about these so-called religious people too.
Okay.
And one thing is,
now the religious people are not Islam, not Muslims.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, they are kind of mullahs, religious. 85% of the people are Muslim. But when I'm talking about the religious people, they are Muslim religious. No, these are kind of like priests, so-called priests.
Okay.
Okay.
That would they be considered part of the Muslim religion, or
Yeah,
would they?
yeah.
They would be.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Just like here, you have Catholic priests or the Muslim priests. But
Okay.
if you read the Quran, it doesn't talk. You need a priest to conduct your prayer. Nothing.
Oh, okay.
But even though the religion doesn't require it, it has people making it into a profession.
Okay. And so stories like this poke fun at those kind of people.
Yeah. And another thing is, Islam allows you to marry up to 4 times, but in Quran it says you have to treat all of them equally. If you cannot treat them equally from all them, you should not marry more than one.
Okay.
If you marry more than one, you have to treat everybody equally in every respect. But it found out people take these things that it allows polygamy, but society itself is not polygamous. It is against the polygamy.
Okay.
But even so, since the religion gives you allowance for polygamous people to be around, so a lot of time we found out a lot of these priests marry more than once. They take and that thing, and a lot of these older men marry younger women. So there's a lot of jokes about that too.
Okay. taking advantage of the system.
Yeah. Matter of fact, here's a lot of these are here about.
There are a lot of values.
There's the one that he got collected from a storyteller who was 130 years old. That's incredible. I just happened to see. In his explanation, he says the storyteller is 130 years old. He cannot speak clearly because he's very old. And one of my father hired somebody to basically go and collect some stories from him. So this story is from that guy who's 130 years old. And a lot of these stories are also called slok. Sloks are like...
Could you spell that?
Slok.
S-L?
S-L-O-C-K. Slok.
Okay.
Sloks are like little poetry. I don't know if there's something called little poetry in English equivalent. But it has some message in that poetry. It's like some morals in that.
Okay.
But it's a very small poetry. A lot of time poetry has in its full sense, it has beginning and middle, all kinds of things. But these are like simple poetry, but it has everything. So, and those are going to be difficult for me to translate because number one, some of the language that some of this are written in are, like I said, are in accent of that area. Bangladesh is a very small country. It's as big as Wisconsin, state of Wisconsin, but it has 110 million people living in there. And there are at least hundreds of accents, different accents, within that little piece of land. So it's amazing. I don't know how that happened.
So it's difficult for people sometimes to understand each other.
Right. I don't understand the northern accent. I'm from the south. And I don't even understand some of the southern accent. Even though I grew up in the city. City is like more book language. It has developed into a kind of like a generic language. But if you go to the countryside, there are different areas have different accents. So that's why he didn't want it to change, because he wanted to preserve that accent also, the ways of saying, because he thought these are also variation in languages. And of course, he believes language is dynamic, it's always changing. So you never knew the English that we speak today. 400 years ago, it was not the same English. It was different English.
Yeah.
Okay. So like when you read Shakespeare, you see a different English. We don't talk like that anymore.
Thank goodness, right?
Well, that's the way. I mean, but if you don't preserve that, you maybe there are certain things, nuances in there that may be lost in these today's languages if you don't preserve. So he started preserving those too.
So values play a big role in the different stories. Wisdom, loyalty, obedience.
Yes.
They're interwoven in all of these stories.
Yes. Another thing is, discovery he found that Bangladesh actually, Islam came to Bangladesh only 500 years ago. Okay? But before that it was a Buddhist country. Before that it was Hindu country. No, I'm sorry, before that it went through a lot of transformation, like 500 years ago Muslims, majority, right now it's majority Muslim. But 500 years back it was predominantly Hindu.
Okay.
But if you go back several thousand years, it was predominantly Buddhist.
Okay.
And if you go back further, it was Hindu. So one of the Hindu king went through a transformation and became a Buddhist. And he was so successful because you heard of Ashoka, I don't know. He was a very ruthless king. And all of a sudden, he found religion, and he believed in Buddha's teaching of non-violence. Buddha was a Hindu Brahman's son who studied his own religion. He believed in non-violence and all that. So Buddhism actually is the offshoot of Hinduism.
Okay.
So this king became a Buddhist because he started liking Buddha's teaching and all that. And then after that king died, the Hinduism revived again, and a lot of people became Hindus again. And then Islam came through missionaries activity, and a lot of people started converting to Islam, and Islam is not the predominant religion. But what he found a story that in origination the hero will have a Hindu name, and then he found the same story told by the Muslim where the same character, same everything, but the name is a Muslim name. Okay, so a lot of times, that's why he thinks that this story is very old, because it has origin in the Hindu era probably, but then Muslim era everything remains same, only the names change.
So what he did was able to trace the story back through the different religions of Bangladesh.
Yeah. So he said that he thought that it's the same story, but at different stages it got different characters' names, and some he found variation where the name was half Hindu, half Muslim.
Really?
Yes. Which is
that's extraordinary.
Which he also thought very interesting.
Yeah.
Like one of the first story here is called Lonishan. It's a fascinating story actually, but I don't have the time to write now. But if you want me to, but this is a huge story. It's a very fascinating story because the hero this one is a kind of like a allegorical story. It's kind of fantasy.
Okay.
So the hero has half Muslim name, half Hindu. Lonishan. Shen is a Hindu surname, and Loni is a Muslim name. So Lonishan. That's the name of the hero. So there are heroes and the villains and all that. And then some of the stories that I told, the two stories I told you, kind of like light, funny kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there are certain things which is very long and it's very well stuffed, the story.
Very serious?
It's more fantasy.
Okay.
The other thing is, they always, the storytellers, they intermingle poetry and story. So in the process of telling story, they will recite poems and all that. So it's like a full package.
Okay.
Okay, and they always start with a slope or little poetry.
Will the stories interconnect at all, or is it, is there a theme when they do that, or are they just kind of telling separate?
No, there is a interconnected thing too. I wish I can remember because whenever I read a little bit, then I remember, but I don't remember. I found very conservative. People don't talk about sex is kind of like talking about sex is like a taboo kind of thing. You don't talk publicly. But I found a lot of the stories have a lot of very strong sexual connotation.
Really?
Yeah, and that's why I think that a lot in the past our society was probably more liberal, more open, but somehow religious ordering or something probably made it more conservative.
Would these stories be told to men and women, or men and women and children, or would the stories with
in the village, kind of like when they tell the story in a village judgmental setting, usually men go there. Women don't participate in that.
Okay.
So this is mostly men. In the storytellers, a lot of times if you go to the bazaar, very few females go to the bazaar, so it's in mainly male setting. And children are there too. But a lot of times, the storytellers is brought into a household where probably women and men are together.
Okay.
But I don't think some of the stories right now would be told in mixed company.
Okay.
That's why I think that this story originated in an era where society was much more liberal.
Do you think it would have been told in mixed company when society was more liberal, where today it would not?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's my hunch.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not.
Are there the storytellers, the storytellers, the professional storytellers? Do they begin learning those stories when they're young?
Yeah.
When they're very young, as a boy or a girl?
Yeah. My father, one of his storytellers, his name is Arif Mia, who was my father's. He was the security guard in my father's office.
Huh.
Okay. So one day, my father, when he was coming from office, he saw 5 or 6. He worked late at night, and he saw 5 or 6 men were just sitting in a room and just gossiping. And one of the persons that was having a good time was his security guard. Okay. So they said, "What are you guys doing here? I thought you were having a good time." They said, "Oh, those guys, they called me up to tell some stories." I was just like, "Oh, you're a storyteller." So that's how my father found out that the security guard, his father was a professional storyteller. The security guard, he was not, but he learned the trade. So my father said he could have been one if he stayed in the village, because he was a professional storyteller.
Okay.
But he came to the city and became a security guard, and so he got a little bit better paying job, so, he didn't go. But had he stayed in the village, he probably would have been a storyteller.
Okay.
Because he had all the characteristics of a professional storyteller. So a lot of these entries here are from his own, Arif Mia, his name, his own collection or storytelling. But he was such a good storyteller, my father used to pay him to go to the village and listen to other people's story and come to tell them. So he became a collector also.
Okay.
So, and another thing he does, all the story, he gives who the original teller is, where he's from, and who the transform,
So you actually could take that and go back
Yes.
to a village and find the person that told the story.
Yes, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Every story has how the story was collected, and then there's a dissection of the story.
Okay.
The dissection he did, eventually what he wanted to do is classify the story. He believed he had like several classifications. Let me see what he called them. Different classification he thought was Jibon Katha, life, Jibon Katha, life, life stories, Samaj Katha, social stories, Niti Katha, moral stories, Slok Katha, which is like small poetry type of classification, which is about a fantasy. So he said there are several classifications. So if you could classify these, next step was that he stayed alive was to classify them and then try to see if there's any pattern to them.
So the stories. Say that one more time. The stories fell into different categories.
Categories, yeah. Well, he wanted to categorize. They didn't fall into. He wanted to clarify. He left some writings here for anybody who wants to do further research. In there, he said that I tried to classify these stories in this several kind of classification. One is Jibon Katha. Stories of life.
Okay.
much of the stories of the society. The stories of life talks about the relationship between, say, a family, husband and wife, children, how the life of a person, the story, the truth in them. So much of how the story is telling about the whole society in general. Okay.
They were lived together.
Lived together in a village setting, as then he said the niti, but the morals. What was the so if you classify them, then you can tell that 400. If you can also tell this story was originated 400 years ago, you can also pinpoint at that time how the family structure was, how the social structure was, okay, and how the moral of that society was. Okay, and slok kata is like poetry, stages of poetry. What caused that poetry will do it, and fantasy, because fantasy also is a reflection of life. Even though it's fantasy, if you can find a component of that in our current society.
Yep.
Okay, so that's why I said that even though even fantasies can be mapped into our regular social setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting that those main components really play out through the different stories. You see it. I mean, and just the two that you've talked about.
Yeah.
You can see the moral or the moral of the society,
Yeah.
or of the family.
Yeah. Like for example, here this one, the one about the fraud, fraud priest.
Yes.
Talks about the society that that being a fraud by the priest was a predominant thing there. Okay. So it tells you that, but it also tells you how the women is also, has had a role to play, even though she's not up front, but from behind the scenes she can play a very important role.
Yep.
And there are some stories where it talks about the problems between husband and wife, like a lot of, our society is very male-dominated society, but a lot of times, the male, even though he shouts a lot, he shows he's macho, doesn't have that he cannot satisfy his wife actually or something. So in front of his wife he's really like a baby, but outside he shows that he's very macho. So a lot of the stories talk about those kind of conflicts also.
Okay. All right.
So he shows that he's a big guy in the public, but when he goes home his wife really chews him out. You go shout outside and shout, but when you come to me you're nobody.
So a story like that would be could be seen as a funny story when it's told to a crowd of men and women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things, different things are there.
Would they see it as a funny story? Would people laugh if there were a story that was telling about a husband who was macho and was in front of his friends, but when he came home he was kind of meek and quiet?
Yeah.
Would that be considered funny? Would that be considered a story that people would laugh?
The one I was talking about, maybe I didn't explain that. What I'm saying that he shows macho, but in front of he's not a manly enough to satisfy his wife.
Okay.
So he shows off that he's macho, but when he comes home, he's not a macho man. But a lot of the stories talks about those kind of incidents.
Okay, where the husband can't satisfy his wife or doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in front of his wife, he's like a little baby, but he goes, but he knows that he's like that, so he has to probably prove his macho-ness. So he screams out, in front of others, he screams at his wife, beats her up.
Okay.
But the other thing I found that there's a lot of wife beating.
There is.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of stories talk about like when the men they fail at something, they come home and they beat their wife.
Huh.
So two things. Number one is probably wife beating has been very common in our society. And secondly, he could also try to show that how women are oppressed. So there's a lot of things. A lot of the stories I see, the husband comes and women say something, so they beat up the wife. There's a lot of incidents.
That is in the stories, a lot of incidents in the stories.
Yeah. So,
is that older? Do you think that goes back farther? Is that
no, I think it's really
current?
Even the current society is also. It happened on the older side too, but even in the current society, I'm sure it's pretty predominant. But one thing good though, it brings the thing out of the front. So when the stories are told, and the people know about it, and it is not considered good, but there's a lot of incidents. So that falls in the category of special stories, or so much more.
Okay. Okay, we're doing here.
You want to hear one? I don't know if I don't want to say any big, long story because it's going to take.
No, it's probably this. The tape is about out here. Let me just.
Oh, you ready?
Yeah. Just turn the tape over.
I don't remember the full story, but I'll paraphrase it again. There's two learned person. Okay, they are always competing with each other. You know, the one is trying to show off the other how good, how learned he is. So one day they were, going to give a talk to some village. So and they were going to that other village. It got dark, so they decided to stay, camp out in one of the forests and stay there. So when did that? So they ran into this guy there, who was kind of not very learned, kind of what is it called, stupid. So this two learned was trying to show off to this guy, hey, I can do this, I can do that, And this guy said, oh, okay, good, you guys are learned, of course. They're trying to show off. So one guy, these two, the learned one, always competing with each other. So one guy went for a walk and he came back and he found a lot of broken up bones and all that. So he said, look, I'm so learned, I can put all this bone together and make it into a lion. Oh, he said, oh yeah, sure I can. So this guy, he goes and he puts the bones together and make into a lion. It looks exactly like a lion. But this is nothing. I can give life to this lion. The dumb guy said, before you do that, can I do something? Can I ask you something? He said, yeah, go ahead. So please give me a couple of minutes before I climb this tree, then you can give life to the lion. So the stupid guy climbed the tree, so the second guy gave life to the lion, and of course, what happened to those two learned persons?
Or eaten. Well, does the lion have a significance in terms of a particular kind of animal in the story, other than one that will eat the participants?
Yeah, lion is considered the king of the forest. I guess.
Okay.
My ideas.
All right. Does a lion play a role in Bangladesh in the society at all, in any way?
Nothing important.
Okay.
Yeah. But the feeling, it just came here because it's the most powerful, so animal in the lion. Yeah, he gave life, but he cut it now. So sometimes, there is a saying called upasthit buddhi, the presence of smartness, how quickly you can do. Like this guy may be stupid, but he knows what is right, and he can think, how to survive. So a lot of time, the presence of the intelligence that you have, there's a word I cannot think of or something, that takes you a long way, then you could be a rocket scientist.
Yeah. He knew enough to get up the tree.
Yeah.
Now those are the stories. The stories seem to really present the values very well. I mean, they're very clear. They're clear. They're simple. They don't seem to be complicated.
No, most of them are. These are very short stories that I can remember and tell. The complicated ones are fantasies.
Okay.
And it also it has a main theme. Okay, it's the Lonitian, the one I talked about, the most fascinating story that I like. It has wars across generation. It has a tremendously powerful hero, and he's got all these good bad virtues, archetypes,
Okay.
And then there are the villains and all that, and those are more fantasies,
okay.
Because they fight with all kinds of weapons that you may have probably,
Will the story go on for a long period of time?
For a long period of time.
Okay.
And it transcends eras even. And that's why the fascinating part of that story was how it transcended from one religious era to the next.
Okay.
And a lot of time, actually, one thing, like in the West, there is a myth that certain Islam spread through sword. There is a myth there. in Bangladesh, actually, no Muslim rulers ever conquered Bangladesh. Islam came to Bangladesh through missionaries. Okay, like I said, 500 years ago. And what happened is the places where Islam succeeded. I won't say that there is no place where sword was not a factor. There may have been some places, but in Indonesia or Bangladesh, where I'm talking about, it succeeded because it did not challenge the indigenous religion. It incorporated that into the belief system. Okay, and a lot of this, you see that in a lot of the stories, because it took the Buddhist or Hindu value system and it incorporated into the Islamic value system.
And the stories will talk about that.
Talk about that too.
That's interesting. So that there was not a threat of taking over a religion.
Yeah. So that's why people doesn't think that I didn't really convert. I always was that.
Okay.
That concept of conversion doesn't. Nobody it doesn't even come. They call it results. But there's another word for it, not conversion. I always was that. I didn't.
But then that also means that people can understand the stories that go back many years.
Yeah.
Because they grew up over years.
So that's why you find Islam in Bangladesh very different from Islam in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, okay.
In the sense of it's practiced, because it hasn't really, it was tempered. It took the good values of Islam, but it has kept our original cultural shape.
Okay.
So it's like it is a different flavor. It's more Sufi Islam. Actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Sufis.
Sufis?
Sufis. It's a mystical order in Islam.
No.
Who doesn't, Sufis kind of like all incorporating, because there is only one God, so it doesn't really matter what you call God, or somebody calls, Yahweh, or somebody say Krishna. It doesn't really matter. You're always calling the same God.
Yeah.
So he said that. So the process is not important. The object is more important. What you're, going towards.
Okay.
So that's how that universal approach to it kind of incorporated things. So it was more acceptable to a lot of Hindu religious people to it. I'm just still the same God that I'm worshipping. So I'm not really converting. So a lot of the stories talk about those religious things also.
Well, it's interesting that the tie-in between the religious aspect and the cultural aspect and society, as it seems that the stories blend all of those things into I don't want to say take advantage of, but really show the values, Muslim values or values from the society.
Yes.
Okay. See if I have anything else. You really covered in your explanations. You really covered well. And the story is really is time viewed as we view it, is past, present, and future?
That's actually a very good question. In Eastern, I'm now going to see, I also did a little bit studies on, not stories, but on the concepts of time and other things. So in Asia, not only in Bangladesh, in Asian concept in general, and Bangladesh is no different because we're part of about Asia, time has a completely different connotation than here. Here time is linear, time is short. You always hear time is short. So here time runs out, you run out of time. Over there time actually walks, it doesn't really run out. So the concept of time is different. So and you see that in our culture, in activities. So if you go to suppose you're invited for a dinner, here if you're invited at 7:30, you better, if you don't show up at 7:30, then you're considered kind of not polite. Or then if you show up at 7:30, then people will say, oh, what is this guy? This guy is hungry or something? He came up. So it's customary to come late.
Okay.
Okay, so concept of time is different. Here it's customary to come on time. Over there it's customary
to be late.
Okay. And if you come on time, people start questioning, you're kind of weird or something. Okay.
How late would it be? A half hour?
More, sometimes like, especially weddings. That's something I'm used to more Western life, so if I go invited there, I know that to be late. I'll be half an hour late, but a lot of times people are 2 hours late.
Really?
Weddings, I attended a lot of weddings. It's at 7:30 in the evening. The dinner, the bride doesn't show up till 9:30, 10. So they cannot serve you dinner because things come to us. So time has a different concept.
So everybody will show up late. The bride, the groom.
No, usually that takes place in bride's house.
Okay.
The bride is there.
Okay.
Yeah. So even after the groom comes, then they have bring the bride and groom to that doesn't happen till after midnight sometimes. So most of the time people are gone. So time has a completely different concept.
Okay. And you see that in the stories as well. Do you see the stories talking about time differently? Or I shouldn't say differently, but the stories mirror the time as it's viewed in the culture?
Could be, yeah, it probably does.
Yeah.
There is a joke in Bangladesh where it says this guy goes to the railway station and asks the ticket counter, he said, "Can you please tell me when is the 9 o'clock train going to arrive?" The 9 o'clock train never arrives on 9 o'clock. So he asks, what time is the 9 o'clock train going to arrive? It's also time has a different concept. Also like color. Here you see black is a color of mourning. In our society, white is a color of mourning.
Okay.
So if you're a widow, they wear white.
Okay.
Okay. It's just different opposite.
Here, I think we've talked about colors where there are 11 primary colors in the United States. I can't name them all, but white, black, and green, and blue, and red, and yellow. And are there similar colors in Bangladesh, or are there fewer, or more?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't want to say
That's
that.
all right.
But I can. There are other things like not so in Bangladesh, but in India, or in China. Here, like when you go to visit your, somebody's grave, you take flowers, right? So in respect, you show flowers. In India and China, they take fruits, or rice, or fish, or some fruits.
So more food than flowers.
Flowers.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there was a thing like in China, one missionary went and saw this guy bring rice and flowers and fruits to his father's grave. He said, "Hey Chan, do you think your father is going to get up and eat these fruits?" Then Chan replied, "Well, when your father gets up to smell those flowers."
That's good.
So we always, something is different, we kind of, to make a judgment.
Yes.
How come this guy gives fruits to his father's grave? But that's the way they show. So these are the different symbols that have meaning. And in Hindu culture, Muslim culture is different. Hindu culture, when they do, prayers, they put milk, and they have this statue. So they give the statue milk, fruits, and all kinds of things as an offering.
Okay.
Of course, the statue is not going to come in, but it's just a showing of respect and showing of just offering. What is important to me, I give it to you in respect or something like that. So in Hindu culture, that's very important.
Okay.
Of course, that caused a conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus.
Another story. Well, I was just noticing the time. I know that you had asked to keep us on track.
Sure, 1 hour, yeah.
I probably should let you
I
go.
also have a tendency to keep going.
That's okay. It's very interesting.